Welcome back everyone. So we have the spell book and I've been having a little play with this metallic luster. It's an iced espresso. I don't think it's sold anymore. I got this on a clearance at some point. But basically it's just gilding wax or wax metallic finish, and you can get it in all different colours. A gold would probably be preferable, but I think this brownie will be quite good for a Halloweeny kind of project anyway. So yeah, so you can see I've started putting it on there, but I'm going to show you basically how to do it. All you do is just grab some on your finger and start applying it to these raised areas. So I think this could look really cool. It's got a really nice sheen to it. And I think once I've got this on, I don't think I'll need much more in terms of detail, but we can see. So you can see it's going to take to all them raised areas. If you want to do a little bit more, you can do it on the cracks and crevices as well, and it will take to them. I would just build up slowly and add more if necessary, because you can't take away once you've put it on. Okay, I think I'm quite happy with that. I could do the whole of the back on all these little crevices. I might do little touches, but I don't want it to be overly gold. I still want some of that texture to be quite subtle. So yeah, I don't think I'm going to overdo it. It's a very satisfying process, this, because it literally just picks up where those indents are. So it's not hard, but it creates a really nice effect. So it's quite addictive. You need to know when to stop, which I think is now. Yeah, because if you do get it where there's no crevices, it can look a bit messy, but to be honest, I don't really care. You can just kind of wipe some of it away. And yeah, so I think I'm happy with that. So do I want to add anything else? I think for now I'm quite happy with that. Let's just make sure it's as good as it can be. So yeah, it's a really easy cover to do, something like that, and that's what I wanted for this project, just something really quite simple and quick. So that's the cover, and now we're going to go on to putting some pages in. So we'll have a look at how to do that next. So for the pages, I have pre-prepared some tea dyed paper. It's just normal printed paper dyed with tea bags. I do have another video on my channel where I show you how to do this, but it's really easy, but I'll link it up there anyway. So I've got those, which will primarily, I was going to do it all tea dyed at first, but then I thought let's add some variety. So I've got some baking paper, which I thought might be quite nice. It does curl a bit. I've had this under a book and it's still not really flat, but I think it'd add a nice texture, because it's meant to be like a spell book. It's supposed to be a little bit rough around the edges. I think that would work well, and I've ripped the edges, ripped them with a ruler rather than cut them, because I thought that would look a little bit more authentic, if you like. I've got some of these papers that I got off AliExpress in a pack. I'm going to, obviously all these need to be folded, so some will be smaller than others, so I'm going to be folding them all, which I'll show you in a minute. so just bear that in mind with your pages. But I don't mind some being smaller than others. It's quite a small book anyway. So yeah, I've got this really nice paper bag, which I thought might fit this kind of witchy potion theme because it's got bugs on, so I'm going to use one of those. So I'm mixing like very kind of hoardy things that I would usually hoard like this. I'm mixing a little bit of that in with just stuff that's, you know, quite usable and quite kind of not disposable, but stuff that I've got quite a lot of that I'm not too precious about. So yeah, more of that AliExpress book paper. I've got just some brown paper, and basically that's how I'm going to make my signature. So just a bit of everything. So I think I'm going to do two signatures, because it's quite a slim book and I want it to have space for chunk as well if I decide to put quite a bit in there. So to make the signatures, what I would do, I'd first of all get together the papers that I want and cut them down to size. So I've got these. I need to cut my tea dye paper down to size. Okay, so I haven't cut these perfectly by any stretch. I've done them all kind of a bit different, and that's fine. And if you have any pieces like this that are kind of still fairly big, you can always bind them in and just have little flaps and pockets and things. So yes, we can do that. So now what you need to do is start stacking, and also you can keep these bits for like embellishments and stuff if you want. What we need to do now is start stacking our signatures. So I know I wanted in each one of each of these types of things. So that was one signature and this was another. So I just need to add in my book page, my tea dye paper now. So we're going to want to fold them. I mean, you don't have to fold them exactly in half. You could fold it like this if you wanted and have the smaller page on one side, a big page on the other. But for the time being, I'm just going to fold them in half just to keep it a little bit easier. Well, near enough in half. And if you're wanting to do any sewing or anything on your pages, I've seen amazing junk journals before that have got like stitching and stuff. Now would be a good time to do it before you bind your pages, but I don't want to get too into this because it is just kind of a quick project. So I'm just going to go with this for now. And if I make one in future, maybe I will add some kind of sewing and stuff like that, because they do look really cool with extra texture and stuff like that. Okay, so I've got some of those ready. So let's see, I've got 6, so I'll save 3 for the other signature and 3 for this signature, and I like to mix them up. So first page, to keep everything together, it's probably a good idea to have quite a big page. So let's have that as the first page. And then maybe a baking paper. This is already folded, so line that up with the middle. And then perhaps one of these. So I'll fold that in half as well. Match it up. And then maybe another tea-dyed page. And then maybe a book page. Fold that one up. And then maybe another baking paper. Another tea dye, and finally one of the book pages. So you can take as much time as you need with this. I'm just doing it quite randomly because, like I said, I don't want to spend loads of time doing this. And you can put them in any which way, so you could put it that way or you can put it that way. You're going to see both sides, so it's just how you want to position it. So that would be my first signature. So now should theoretically line up like that, and that would be a signature like so. So it's only a little one, but I think that's fine. So what I would do now, I would make sure they were all kind of lined up the way I wanted. So I'd go through it and just look and see yeah, that looks pretty nice. Add pages if necessary, take away pages if necessary. These might need trimming the tops and the bottoms depending on the size, but we can look at that later. And just to keep it in place for now, I would just use a binder clip or a paper clip or something like that. Actually, I do have a paper clip which might be a bit less intrusive than the binder clip. So we can just put that like that. In fact, I'll use both and keep that together for now. So I'm going to pop that to one side and do the next one. So I'll speed this bit up because it's just the same pretty much. If you are using a paper bag like this, I'll just say now, it's the same process. You just fold it over and match it up, and then you've just got a pocket in one side, and you could always open up the other side and make it a pocket as well. So if you want to keep it as a pocket, you're best keeping this flap separate, because obviously that's going to be folded over to create your flap. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and do this. And again, if they're all kind of fairly lined up, you can just put it all together like that. And again, just go through and make sure everything is how you want it. Looks okay. I think it's really interesting to have a mix of pages, but of course you could just do it with a simple tea-dyed page or simple printer paper and just keep it as like a notebook. So what I would do, this is optional now. Obviously you're going to pin them together again, but obviously I've got some kind of edges that are lifting here. So what I will probably do once I pin them together is put a book on there to maybe put them like that, and then put like a heavy something on there to keep them flat. Don't have to. It's, I mean, the curly edges kind of add to it anyway, but this one in particular is kind of annoying me, so I'd probably do that just to kind of flatten them a bit. And yeah, leave that maybe overnight or something if it's really bothering you. If it's not, you don't need to. And then next will be to bind them. Before we put the pages in, we need to make a guide for the spine. So what I've done is I've just off camera glued this in. It's just a strip of fabric. Some people use cheesecloth, but I didn't have that, so I've just put a strip of linen fabric in. You don't have to do this, it's more just for decorative purposes. So you've got a little bit of a book cloth type thing coming out the top and the bottom. I don't know if it might reinforce the spine a bit, I'm not sure, but anyway, I just added that. You're not really going to see it, it's just kind of for this top and bottom bit. So what I've done is I've created a guide for my binding. So I've measured my spine and made a strip the same size, so that fits exactly in there. And then I've measured 2 kind of evenly spaced lines down, and that's because I've got 2 signatures. So if you had more than 2, if you had 3, you do 3 lines. If you had 4, you do 4 lines, and so on. So that's going to be my guide. Now I need to mark where I want my holes. So this is going to guide me both where to pierce my signatures and where to pierce my binding. So if you were doing it straight into the spine, where you pierce your spine, but I'm going to be doing it on like a panel type thing to stick in, because I don't want it showing on that outside layer. So I'll explain that in a second as well. But yeah, we need to know how to pierce the hole. So what I'm going to do is basically just measure 2 centimeters down from the top, 2 centimeters up from the bottom, and then measure that which is 15 centimeters, and divide that by 2, which is 7.5. So I'm going to 7.5 there, and I'm going to do exactly the same on the other line. So 2 centimeters, 2 centimeters, and then 7.5. So there you can see I've got a top, a middle, and a bottom where I need to pierce. So then you need to get your awl or whatever you want to pierce with. I would recommend an awl because you could use a needle, but you might hurt yourself, so probably not the best idea. And I also have a binding tool, but you can just use some foam or something. Yeah, I have this binding tool which kind of makes it easier to make the holes, but you can just use some foam underneath if you want. So yeah, you would just pierce where those holes, where those marks are that you've made. Okay, and that is going to be your guide. So when you get your signatures, and I wanted to add a little bit, I found this paper. It's like a eco-dyed paper. I pre-bought it, I didn't make it myself, but I have tea dyed it because it was like a white and it was quite stark white. So I want to add some of this into my signature, so I'm just quickly going to cut that down and add them as well. Just thought maybe to, because I put my signatures in the book like this, and although I do want to keep it quite spacey because I want to add lots of bits to it, it still looked a little bit sad. It's alright, I don't want to put too much more in, but I thought if I add one of these to each signature, I might just add a little bit something. So I'm just going to cut that down. And again, fold it and add it to each signature. And eco dyeing is really cool. It's quite messy and it involves using an oven, I think, or a pan. So I don't really trust myself to do it, but there's plenty of videos on YouTube to show you how you can get these kind of prints with leaves and things like that. I'm going to add that one there. And this one, it's quite a skinny one, the way I've cut it, but it doesn't really matter. It just makes an extra little bit of interest. I might put that inside because I kind of want the start of the signature to be relatively big sheets. So I'm going to pop that inside. So yeah, get all your signatures how you want them, and then we're going to pin them together. Now this can be quite tricky because you might have ones like this where it goes a bit in. So what you need to do in that case is, let's have a look, pin it as much as you can. But generally it won't matter too much because your guide basically, so if this is going to be my first signature, you want to get your guide and you want to match this line up with your fold line. So it is quite important that it stays together, but as long as you can kind of hold it in place like that, it should be fine. So we want to line this up, and it's quite hard to see the fold line, so I'm just going to make a slight pencil mark there, which can be rubbed out at a later date. And I'm going to match, I'm just going to pull that up and make sure it's matched with that line. And then what I do first, before I would actually pierce it, I would just make the mark. And obviously because we've got a smaller piece here. I got kind of marks going across 2 of the pages, so just need to bear all this in mind really. So now I've got my marks, I can make them a little bit clearer. And then go on to pierce it in the same way that we did the guide, and you can pierce right through. And you just want to make sure when you're coming through, you are in fact coming through that fold. Okay, so then you've got those. And you do the same with the second signature, but this time you would match it up to the second line. So there's the 2 signatures punched through, so I'm going to pop those over there for now. And then we need to do the same thing with our little kind of stand kind of thing. So this, again, I've measured to be the size of the spine, but this time I've added on about 3 centimeters either side. Just a piece of card or thick paper. You can use fabric as well, or you know, a sturdier card. This is what's going to be holding in your pages if you don't want them straight into the book. So the reason we put a gap on either side is so when we put our end paper, once it's all bound in and we put our end paper on, it will really hold it nicely in place there. So we need to use the guide again to make our marks, and this time it shouldn't be too fiddly because it fits exactly in there. So I'm just going to make those marks there and then punch them through. Okie doke. So we're going to be binding the pages onto this. We don't need to have the cover anywhere near right now because we're going to stick this in. If you were binding it to the cover, then obviously you'd use the cover instead of this. So you would have pierced your holes in there. Now, I do somewhere, I think, yep, have a needle. A curved needle can be quite good. I did have one, but I've lost it. But as long as it's kind of a big kind of darning needle like this, that'll be fine. And ideally you would use a waxed cord, but again, I don't have any left. So, you can just use sewing thread. It's not going to be the strongest. I think that's all I've got at the moment, and because I want to get this done, I think that's just what I'm going to use. But if you have any kind of cord, that might be better. In fact, I might have something. So I do have this kind of cordy stuff, which might be quite good. If that fits through my needle, I might try and use that. But a waxed thread or cord is a good one because it's waxed, it will go through quite smoothly. It doesn't knot like this. So that's probably going to be ideal. So I'm not an expert in bookbinding by any stretch. I've not done loads, I've done a bit, and this is kind of just kind of winging it a bit, but I've watched a few videos and seen obviously the best ways to do it, so hopefully this will be useful to you. Right, so we want to get the first signature. I think this will be okay for the first one. And what you want to do now, if you want to keep this knots on the, so the excess kind of thread on the outside of your spine, which I'm probably going to do because my spine is encased, I would, if I was doing it on the outside of the book, I'd probably tie them so that on the inside. And this is where I realised that my thread is going to be too thick for my needle. I think I have another needle, bear with me. Okay, so I have a thicker needle here. I'm going to take about, it doesn't really matter too much, about an arm, about 2 arms lengths of the thread. And bearing in mind, the thicker your thread and the thicker your needle, obviously you're going to get bigger holes. So just bear that in mind. I'm not too bothered because I'd rather just have a thick thread. Keep it nice and sturdy, but it's up to you. For your more delicate look, I would go for a thinner cord with a thinner needle. Okay, so we need to attach this onto the stand. So we start in the middle, and if you want your tail end, like your knot, to be on the inside, go from the inside out. I want it to be on the back, on the outside, because it's going to be going into the book so that I won't see it and it'll be nice and encased. So I'm going to come from the outside in, but then obviously I need this stand. So this is going to be the first signature, so I'm starting on this side if you look at it like a book, and so I'm going to go through there and then go through the middle of the signature and leave a little tail on the outside. So it can be a bit fiddly at first when you're working with all these pieces. You can actually pin it at the top if that's easier, like that. Okay, and then you're going to go up either to the top or the bottom, it doesn't matter. I'm going to go through the top one this time, so from the inside out. Make sure you don't pull your tail through. The only problem with pinning it is you might not necessarily have it in the right set place, in the right section, so sometimes it's better just to kind of handle it. Pull that through, making sure I've still got a nice tail there. And then on the back here, we're going to go all the way down to the bottom. So through this stand one first and then through the signature. And because my needle's quite big, it is a bit tough to get it through. Just needs a little wangle about sometimes. Keep your tail to one side of the string, and then we're going to go back through the middle. So pull it tight as you go, but be careful because you can rip your pages, so don't be too forceful, just make sure it's taut. And then we're going to go back in from where we started. So make sure it's nice and neat inside, that's fine. And we want to keep this on the other side to where we started from. So you can see I've got one on each side and this in the middle. Pull it kind of away from each other, but again, not too tight, not too much, because you don't want your pages to tear. That's pretty nice and sturdy, and we do a double knot. And because this is going to be on the inside of the spine, I'm not worried too much about trimming it down too much. I'll just maybe trim it to about there, because it's all going to get sealed into that spine anyway. So that's the first signature on the stand. And you do exactly the same thing for the second one. So starting from the back, middle, come through, leave a tail, through the middle of your signature. And it can be sometimes, this is why it's good to pin it, but obviously in this case it's quite hard because they're all different sizes. But your pages can kind of lose their positioning, so sometimes you just have to kind of deal with that as well. And you can do one page at a time if you need to. Somewhere here is not, it's not going through. Ah, see where I've gone wrong. Once you've got your first one on, it should be relatively easy because then they'll be together. And making sure you don't lose your tail on the other side. And then through the top. So all the way through the signature and then through the stand thing. And then all the way down to the bottom. And then back through the middle. And it's not the easiest thing to show on camera. There's probably a better tutorial out there on how to do this, but I'm just kind of trying to show you how I'm doing it. And again, we're going to keep each of these on a separate side, pull them tight but gently, not to rip the pages, and tie shut. And just trim those down as well. And then we have a bound signatures on the stand. Now, to put this in, you just glue it in. I'm not entirely sure what glue I want to use because obviously I want it to be strong. I'm tempted to actually use a glue gun because I just feel like that's gonna feel the safest for me. So I think I'll heat the glue gun up and then stick that in there. I've got my glue gun heated up and I'm going to stick this together. Now, my pages are coming out the sides a bit, which I quite like the look of because it's like a spell book and I want it to be kind of messy looking. But if you didn't want that, obviously you could trim those down or make your pages so they actually fit in the first place. I'm sorry, the sun keeps coming out and going back in again. I'm sorry about the light if it's changing or if it doesn't look great. But I just thought we'll get this stuck in. It's not hard, it's just... it's not any specific process, it's just to stick that in. So some people don't stick on here, they just stick the sides to keep that loose. I'm thinking to reinforce because kind of it's the holes are quite big here and it's quite kind of weak looking. I'm going to actually put glue down the actual spine as well. I've tucked all these in so they don't get in the way. So I'm literally just going to put loads of glue, and like I said before, I'm just using a hot glue gun because that's what I feel will stick it the best of what I've got. But you could use like a gel medium or a stronger kind of glue. So I'm going to cake that in glue and very quickly before it dries slot it in to the spine and make sure it's fitting in the spine nicely before you do this. I'm going to make sure that's all nice and glued down. Just put a piece of paper down there in case my glue gun leaks. I think this glue gun is on its last legs. It keeps kind of opening up a bit and the glue coming out a bit, if you can see that. But yeah, so I think I might have to, I have another one, so I just have to change over. So yeah, and you will have possibly this kind of gap in between your two signatures, because you're not going to want to put them that close together. But you can, I mean, I don't mind that. Or what you can do is, once it fills up, it'll kind of disappear anyway, or you can just kind of paint that strip there so you don't see it as much, so it blends in a bit more, but it doesn't bother me too much. Okay, so once that's dry, I'm going to stick these pieces down, and again I'm just going to do it with the glue gun. Try and keep the glue quite thin because I don't want too much bulk. And try and get up to those edges, but you do have to work quickly with the glue gun, obviously, because it dries very quickly. So this probably isn't the best glue to use. You're probably better using some sort of strong paper glue, but I don't really have any, so I'm just using this. And obviously we're putting a page on top of this, so that'll keep it in as well. And do the same on the back. And you just want to make sure as well that it's bending with your book, so it stays quite flexible, because you don't want it to be making it so your book's like staying open. Sometimes it might just take a bit of scoring down that line there, but that's pretty good enough for me. I can always put something on top of it to flatten it a bit. So that's how you would do that, and then we can just use some end paper to cover these. I was going to use these eco dyed papers again. I don't know if they're quite big enough. They're a little bit too short there to cover that, which is quite annoying. Let's see if I've got any more. Yeah, it doesn't really cover that bit there, but I don't know what else I'd want to use really. Yeah, let's just go ahead and use this, because I didn't want to overthink this too much, so let's just go with it. So I'm going to just fold there where I'm going to cut it right up to that edge. And what I might do is ink the edges, so if you have an ink or something, you can do that. And I recently got these little tools as well. These little inking tools, which just make the inking process a little bit easier. So it's just like a sponge. And I'll probably, if I like the look of this, I might go ahead and ink all the other pages as well, but I'm not going to do that on camera because that's just going to take too long. This gives it a bit of an aged look. And I'll stick that on there. So I'm going to again do it with the glue gun. But yeah, so that's the general look of my book. It's a little bit shabby, it's not perfect, but to be fair, it matches the whole theme anyway. I might put a pocket there as well. So I'm going to do the same on the back. Does this piece fit? Yeah, that piece pretty much fits on the back, so I'm going to do the same process. Now we have it. So let's turn this glue gun off because I don't need it anymore. Now, I don't know whether to do in a separate video, kind of decorating inside this book. I'm not going to go too over the top, but I did want to do a little bit of decorating in it. So I might do that in a separate video. This one's probably getting quite long, but there is the general journal. It looks really quite nice. It's all nice and bound together, lots of interesting pages, and it really wasn't that difficult. The binding process probably the lengthiest bit, and obviously the cover bit is probably the funnest bit, but yeah, I'm really pleased with that. So this can be a little witch's journal, a spell book, potions, tomb, whatever you might want it to be, and I'm really happy with that. It would look even cooler if the pages were like stitched and things like that, and you thought about that before you actually went and bound it together, but like I said, I'm not wanting to spend too much time on this, and you could always do some hand stitching with them already bound in like that. I'm really liking this baking paper. That's a really nice texture. So yeah, that's pretty much the book. I will hopefully be back to show you what you can kind of do with it, but yeah, that'll just be a bit of fun, kind of decorating the pages and putting some pockets in and things like that. So join me for that in the future if you'd like, and please give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed this process, and let me know down below if you're making anything like this at all, or just anything. Okay, thanks guys. I've had a lot of fun making this project. I will see you very soon. Bye.